Like to order tonight's study session of May 8th, 2023 at 6 p.m. And all council members are present. Some are here and some are online. And we will move into the very first thing on our study session business, and it is the WashDOT SR 167 corridor program update. And I will call on Michael Kosa.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. We have in attendance WashDOT staff and representatives to talk about I-405 167 corridor program. So you're going to hear tonight from Rob Wick. He is the WashDOT I-405 SR 167 Deputy Program Administrator, and April Delchamps is the WashDOT Corridor Planning Manager. So I'd like to welcome them and hear a little bit more about all the work out on 167 that's in the that's planned and planning.
Take it away.
Great. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you to the council members and Mayor for inviting us here today. We were excited to be able to share what we've been doing with April's group and what we hope to do next with my program. So we'll dive in here. There's a little bit of an agenda. It's fairly short. And we're just so you know, we're leaving lots of time for questions and answers afterwards. Obviously, the work that April's and her group have been doing is fairly complex, so we can get into any details you'd like. And then next steps, I think, is something that a lot of people are focused on. And it can be a bit difficult to understand, so happy to answer any questions that we can afterwards. Yeah. Oh, I have control. That's scary. Oh, side out. That one over. Yeah. All right. So I'm kicking this off, the program overview. Oh, I hit the button twice.
Well, you kicked.
Go back. Program and overview and updates. So some of you may not be familiar with what the I-405 SR 167 mega program is. So I'll just do a little bit of a history lesson on that really briefly, and then hand it over to April to give an update on the work that her group has been doing to get the master plan ready to go. And then, as I mentioned, the question and answer afterwards. So as I've already been introduced, the name is a little confusing to see, but it's Rob Wick, and I am the Deputy Program Administrator. I think many of you have met my boss, Lisa Hodson, who is up in Bellevue at the moment. All right, so getting into the details here, and I'll probably refer to my speaking points a bit here as well. But if you guys have any questions during this is relatively informal, and I'm happy to answer along the way as well. So as you're familiar with the I-405 SR 167 program, it goes back a little bit over 20 years with an FEIS that was built for 405 and a master plan. And then approximately 10 years ago, there was also work done on 167, including a bunch of stakeholder signatures that led to funding. Essentially, what this has allowed us to do in this 20 years is to set a broad vision for an entire 50-mile corridor as laid out on the map here in the center. That includes a whole host of different managed lane benefits and multimodal benefits. So the general idea is rather than outside of this corridor where WashDOT tends to deliver projects as we go, a need here, a need there pops up, which can create some challenges in meeting a long-term vision. What the master plan vision has really done is to try and look at the entire 167-405 corridor and say, if we had limited restrictions and a lot of time to deliver this, what would be the best thing for the communities, freight movement, multimodal, and then lump that together and try and deliver that through our stakeholders and legislative directive. And effectively, that's what we've been seeing. So as you're familiar, and I'll cover a handful of projects that are actively going on 167 and what's coming up. And then underneath the 405 master plan and FEIS, we've been delivering for quite some time, a couple of decades. And I'll cover a couple of active projects and projects coming up as well. So some of you may have seen this before. So this is the document in 2010 that I referenced with signatures from up and down the entire corridor that essentially was able to show that this is not a couple of cities wanting something, right? This is an entire corridor that even though they realize the specific project that they're endorsing here or there may not be a direct benefit to them just then, the functioning and management of the overall corridor is what allows for that. So I can say just on a personal note, I was born and raised in Western Washington. I grew up in Burien. My family goes back 6 generations in Western Washington. And it's really easy, I think, for us all to sit here today and think, oh, well, this is what Sumner, or this is what Burien or Seattle is going to be like. But I remember when I was a kid going and picking apples in orchards in downtown Bellevue, right? And when I was born and raised in Burien, it was horse pastures and you could go salmon fishing in the streams. And that is not what it is now. And I have discussions all the time with people who are new to the area, which is a lot of people, to try and say, it's one thing to look back 20, 40, 50 years. It's another to try and look forward that same time period and think, what do we wish we'd done? What do we wish we'd had forethought to do to get to a functioning transportation system that allows us to build well, right? And most of the time, that's not something that our state agency has the opportunity to do. When we develop a master plan, that's effectively exactly what we're doing. But DOT doesn't advocate for the delivery of these plans, right? We're the technical experts. We can certainly help along the way, and my program will deliver on what the funded expectations of the legislature. It really lands on the stakeholders up and down the corridor to advocate for the delivery of those plans. So the money is there. Yeah.
Do you have any idea why Sumner didn't sign the agreement?
I don't know. So I've only been with the 405167 program for about 3 or 4 years. I'm sure there's fascinating history.
Yeah.
Fill me in.
Anyway.
Or you
yeah,
don't know?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. And there's been a number of these different letters that have done that. And depending on where we're focused at the time as a program, and what the specific needs of that town are would probably explain most of that.
Mhm.
Most recently, as we were moving forward on a couple of large pieces of the 405 corridor, the letters were really focused on the 405 stakeholders, which obviously, as we talk about potential next steps for the master plan, the majority of the stakeholders supporting that would likely be in the South. I'm guessing that probably explains it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So as I said, the 405 corridor is laid out on here and then all the way down to the, we don't actually, my program doesn't cover the entire 167, essentially the managed portion of 167. So where there's toll lanes, HOV lanes. The long-term vision includes dual express toll lanes, new direct access and interchange improvements, high capacity transit, typically known as bus rapid transit or BRT, and non-motorized ped and bike connections. So here's where I will jump into some of my talking points because it gets into some detail here. So we're excited to share that the SR 167410 SR 18 northbound congestion management project opened last August. I'm sure everybody here has already been driving on that. The $47 million project delivered by DOT's Olympic region provides 9-mile northbound HOV lane on 167. The extension begins near 410 in Pierce County and ties into the existing hot lanes near Auburn and King County. The project delivers much needed improvements for people in the South End and the State Route 167 corridor as the new northbound HOV lane completes nearly 20 miles of the managed system. We're pleased to see that commuters are utilizing the new lane a lot. While the project is an important piece of the puzzle, it's just, as I'm sure you're aware, just a piece of the puzzle. So go on to the next corridor improvements. So this is funded by toll revenue through Move Ahead Washington. The next major project for the South End is the 167 Corridor Improvement Project. This project will bring benefits to the corridor by adding strategic capacity on 167 and providing system-wide consistency for travelers. The project will upgrade the really old current toll system on 167 to include photo tolling and destination pricing to help us better manage all trips. In addition to improved management, it also adds some consistency. As I suspect the council is already aware, somewhere in the range of 40% of users on South 167 also end up utilizing 405. And it can be a little bit of a interesting, I know I deal with this every time I drive through 167. Okay, what are the hours here versus there and the occupancy here and there and the toll, it all changes, right? Besides the fact that in one place there's photo tolling, the other you slide your thing. We're trying to maintain consistency for a better driver experience, as well as the management of traffic. Okay, so moving on to the next, funded through toll revenue and Move Ahead Washington, the $83 million SR 167 410 to SR 18 southbound congestion management project is the companion to the northbound lane that's already open. This project will begin preliminary design and engineering this year and deliver over 6 miles of new managed lanes between Pacific and Puyallup. The project will bring substantial congestion relief to southbound travelers and will nearly complete the 50-mile managed system through the 405-167 corridor. The project is expected to be awarded in 2025 and open to traffic in 28, which also aligns well with the opening of the Puget Sound Gateway project from 167. And Renton to Bellevue, for anyone who's driven north, you've seen a lot of construction on this project. So we're moving up north. We have been making progress on the Renton to Bellevue widening and express toll lane project. The team continues to make progress and crews are hard at work to deliver this critical project, which will bring multimodal transportation and safety improvement to the corridor. This is the missing link that helps connect the two systems. So the existing toll system on 167, and that's been built on 405. This is sort of the link that then connects those two. And then we have work on either end on 167 and north on 405. So this project is currently in active construction. And for any of you who use the corridor that far north, you'll see as the weather dries out and warms up, this is going to be a very big construction area. You may have already noticed a lot of work going on at the May Creek Bridge. And this is a fairly complex slide, so I don't anticipate people getting a whole lot off of this. I'll just talk to it. But essentially the dashed blue line there, the vertical blue line is where we're at right now. And it gives you a quick glimpse of how many projects we have either in active construction, active design, or will be approaching one of those two in the near term. So we already mentioned the Renton to Bellevue construction project. That's a big one, north of $700 million construction project. 132nd is in active construction. This is the second of 2 seasons. The current schedule shows that wrapping up later this fall of 23. And then the Northeast 85th Street Inline Station project, which is almost entirely funded by Sound Transit, just entered construction. I think I just saw my first cones go out last week, and the next couple of seasons will be very busy for that one. Upcoming, a big one for the 405 corridor, and as I mentioned, many people from your area will utilize that area, is the Brickyard to 527. So this is also somewhere in the range of a $500 million project, a very large linear project, including new bridges on the Sammamish River, a number of new improvements to help support the BRT station or BRT system. So that's a big one that will be upcoming. And I won't mention the other ones. I already mentioned the 167 projects that you saw in here. And if you have any questions on any of those, I'm happy to get to that later. So now I'm going to hand this over to April.
Perfect. Hello, and thank you so much for having me here. And thank you for the introduction from Michael. I'm April Delshapps, and I'm the lead for the 167 master plan effort that's been planned for multiple years and underway for just over 18 months. So I'm going to walk through some slides. It is tough to condense a long process into just a couple of slides. So I welcome all feedback. One of the things I really wanted to give kudos to your team and your staff here. They have been very plugged in helping us with this process and sharing feedback on how to best improve mobility for your residents and really helped shape what we ended up with in the recommendation. But a lot of support to even get where we're at started with a legislative funding for this 167 master planning effort. And that really was the result of advocation from agency partners to get this started, to pull up the 167 corridor plan to the master plan level, just like the 405. So I'm going to walk you through the phases on this one. We really approached this in 5 steps, trying to kind of make sure that we were diligent. And that first phase was about listening. As we're walking through this steps and trying to understand what does a long-term vision for 167 and the constituents that live down here and or work down here, what is important to your residents and the people who work in your town? How will we make mobility better? And what are their priorities? And so that phase really was trying to understand and set as we're moving forward. That phase 2 for existing and future conditions really was focused on trying to understand the lay of the land. What are environmental concerns? What does congestion look like? Where do we have sidewalk gaps? As we're looking at growth, where do we have places and trails? And then future conditions really looks at what happens if we do nothing. As we grow and as we plan for both employment and households, what does our future look like for congestion and mobility if we're not able to build anything? And that phase really was focused on data, but also on getting our partner feedback and making sure we understand all the pieces as that data comes in. Phase 3 was really about developing and screening strategies. That is one side of the term, because of projects is kind of another form of that. As we're walking through, one of the important is this is a multimodal and multi-agency plan. 167 does not happen in a vacuum. It interacts with a lot of local streets, with cross streets, with other modes. And so where we started with was local plans, your transportation improvement program, a comprehensive plan to make sure we understood what are the projects that are happening and planned and cared for by your community that are important to highlight in this master plan effort. And then what are some of the deficiencies on 167 as well as off 167 that we really need to understand and start developing projects and strategies to address. We worked with WSDOT experts as well as our partners to start identifying solutions to some of the toughest challenges for mobility on our corridor. For phase 4, it was scenario planning. This phase really focused on not one project is going to move the needle for mobility on 167. It's going to take a compilation of projects working together to improve multimodal mobility and really quality of life. And so scenario building was really about understanding what packaging of projects did the most to move the needle for the many goals that were developed in coordination with our partners. And we went through 2 scenario planning efforts in order to get to our recommendation. And where we're at now is this final report. This really documents the process, how we engage with our partners in the community, how it impacted and fed our decision-making, and how we developed a recommendation that we can then go forward with. At the bottom, you'll see we really advocated and leaned in on community and partner engagement throughout this. And we really fed that into the process going forward for each critical decision point. Off to the right, you'll see implementation plan in a slightly lighter color. That is intentional, and that is an unfunded implementation plan. The next step is the lift. We have a vision that we've co-created together. Now we need to figure out delivering that vision, looking at phasing, at funding, what makes sense to go first, and what this looks like. How do we deliver this vision as we're going forward? So big peek into kind of what I meant by partner and community engagement. Community engagement really fed multiple processes throughout this, but one of the things that's different about this process is we have a 3-committee structure. Typically, you have your policy advisory committee, which is your elected officials and the like. Technical advisory, which are those like Michael Kosa and public works directors that really help us understand boots on the ground, understanding the community. We also added a 3rd committee, which is the Equity Advisory Committee, that looked at understanding and pulling in community-based organizations and transportation alternative advocates to understand what are the things that are critically important to those that are most underserved, the equity population that really need mobility options. And then as we kind of move up, we have the Muckleshoot Indian tribe as well as the Puyallup tribe of Indians. They participate in these committees as well, but it's a state-to-state relationship, so they're a little bit higher up. And then just a quick plug on community engagement. We did a lot of in-language and online engagement, as well as community pop-ups and different events, including one here in Sumner last summer, as well as online surveys for online open houses and what we call co-creation workshops, where we sat down with our equity communities to understand what are the key pieces. So one of the things I had mentioned a little bit lightly earlier is this was really a data-informed and partner and community refined process. It was important that we use data to understand what we could from the data, but also to refine it, to reflect really what the priorities are and what the needs are of the communities that we're serving here. And the one highlight I will put on this slide is our study area is vast. It's the light green color. And that's because a lot of people depend on the 167 corridor for mobility. Those trips that happen on the 167 corridor, at least one end, so either the beginning or the end, are within that study area. So a bit on our process as we got here. We went from really that listening to developing a vision. Where do we want to go? What does mobility need to be on 167? to developing our goals that are supported by the needs. How do we get there? And what are the key pieces that we need to factor in? Our metrics were measures, how are we doing as we're progressing on these goals? And then that scenario development process I had highlighted earlier, and to finally get to that final study recommendation. And one thing, key piece is your staff was along the way for this entire thing. They gave feedback on each of these steps to make sure that your perspectives were shared in here. Not going to read this slide. I acknowledge it's very long, but the 167 corridor is important, and there's a lot of priorities and a lot of needs. And this is really reflected in this vision. Next up are the goals. Each of these goals, one of the highlights was that we needed to really move the needle to attain progress on all of these goals. This is challenging in our planning processes and project delivery to make sure we're balancing impacts and benefits to really deliver mobility for all. So a quick stop on this slide. We were not planning in a vacuum as we were going. There is a lot of things that are going on that are somewhat of a baseline, and these are funded projects that we really wanted to build our recommendation on. It was important that we leveraged the investments that are already ongoing, including some of the ones that were referenced by Rob, and build on that as we're going forward to make sure we're increasing mobility. And then this is our recommendation, and I have a full list of projects in front of me, but I'm going to go through a couple of them that I think are important to mention. One of the hallmarks of the recommendation that's more of a linear facility is a second express toll lane for the entire corridor from 405 down to 410, the 167 completion project. This will match the dual express toll lanes that are now going in on 405.
Do we have those in our PowerPoint?
You should have this slide, but I also could share this recommendation, this graphic with you afterwards, because I know it's hard to read.
Yeah, because by the time it gets to us, it's pretty small.
No worries, I completely understand. I am happy to share that graphic. I'm also happy to share the full list of projects that can be shared by Michael after this meeting.
All right, thank you.
Oh, no worries. So another one I thought was important to mention is the 21st Street East interchange improvements. There is interchange improvements all up and down the corridor. And one of the things that we heard over and over again is the importance of freight and staying off local streets and on 167, but the reality that it interacts with active transportation, and that is challenging to make those both work. So as we're kind of looking through different interchange improvements, this one is really focused on making sure freight and complete streets and active transportation can operate in a safer place as we're moving forward. Next up is a Sumner direct access ramp. One note I will say on this, we do not know where it's going to go. The benefit of planning and being able to operate in the gray versus the black and white of engineering, that is the next phase, is that we don't have the exact location, and we're going to continue to engage to figure out which one makes sense for the city of Sumner as well as the other ones. But this direct access ramp would facilitate one of the other major investments, which is bus rapid transit on State Route 167. So the buses could use that direct access ramp in order to access the Sounder station. And those that choose to use the express toll lanes could also be able to access downtown Sumner with that same mode. And then last up is a couple expanded Sounder service. One of the challenges with Sounder is it's on a corridor that has a lot of freight. But we heard over and over again the importance of having more Sounder service, but it's unlikely that we could get it to every 10 or 15 minute even interval that a bus rapid transit. So those are complementary projects. And then lastly, one of the things we heard and we found when we were starting to look at plan that have been adopted by different cities is everybody's kind of in a different place in terms of identifying trails, identifying active transportation from sidewalks all the way to bicycle networks. And so we do have some programmatic buckets for each of those highlighted. And then we have some projects, including some in Sumner, that are listed specifically as efforts that have been already underway. And then quickly because I know I'm approaching time. Just a quick on the engagement, we did reach a lot of people in our outreach last fall. We had 2 online open houses, which just the last one ending on April 15th of this past month. And we had over 11,500 visitors to that website and quite a bit of feedback. And that feedback really fed throughout the process. That first initial online open house was last summer. And we used a lot of what we heard in order to frame and refine the recommendation and specific projects to make sure we were putting the right projects in here to address issues. And finally, kind of next steps. We have already had our last technical advisory committee meeting. We have our last equity advisory committee meeting coming up this Friday and our last policy advisory committee meeting coming up on May 23rd. For the master plan, I did share the draft report with your staff last month, as well as a letter of support template. I'll be resharing that as well later this week. So we're really hoping to kind of start wrapping this up as we're getting through to show our work and to start documenting the support so we can start the sort of heavy lift, hopefully together, not as heavy lift of starting to deliver this this vision. And then one last piece on that unfunded, we are working on this. We were talking before with Michael on how do we go from here and how do we start getting implementation funding and start focusing on delivering these projects. And that is our next goal. And with that is all I have, but I'm absolutely happy to answer questions and as is Rob.
Any questions from up here? Councilmember Botetto.
So can you talk about the rapid the bus plan that you have?
I can talk at about a high level, and then I'm actually going to turn it over to Rob because he has experience on this related to delivering bus rapid transit on 405. So at a high level for planning, the intent is to have a bus rapid transit that has frequent service that can really do all day into the evening mobility options. It would go from 405 and connect to the 405 Stride, and at a minimum go down to Puyallup. But one of the things we put in there is that we've heard a lot about the need to connect to light rail as it's coming on board. So we did put in the planning effort that we should also consider extending that bus rapid transit all the way to access light rail when it is put in place. And if you have delivery and specific engineering questions, I will defer to Rob.
I was going to say that was a pretty good answer. I'm not sure what's left to add.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. Very nice presentation, and I compliment you on how complete it is. I commuted from Sumner to Bellevue for work for about 11 years after moving here, and I commuted in all manner of ways, and I've really impressed with how the state is trying to improve transportation on both 167 and 405. The one thing that I've noticed is a lot of people are moving down south, and besides putting more pavement on the ground, and I know you talked about rapid transit and light rail, is there a piece of this that talks about getting the local communities involved with like van pools or ride sharing at all?
So there is not what's called TDM or transportation demand management element to the recommendation. However, when we start looking at kind of an overall statewide program, there is efforts to start expanding that. And one kind of example that again is at kind of the planning level is one of the things we really heard is sometimes transit is not able to be fixed routes, that it doesn't work well in certain communities. And so there's a bucket of funding that is associated with on-demand transit. And as part of it, also highlighting TDM needs. So on-demand transit can take a lot of flavors, from one that can pick you up at your house or your place of employment and take you to like a transit center, all the way up to what's more TDM, so van pools and that like. That's a piece of the puzzle as we're moving forward and delivering this plan, as we're kind of getting this in place and working with our transit partners, including Sound Transit, Pierce Transit, and Metro, to customize the projects that will work best for each community and get them on the ground.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Councilmember Cole.
Yes, I wanted to just follow up a little bit on the question about the bus rapid transit. I know you said you can talk in general about it, but I'm curious. I'm familiar with the 578 and that it runs like every half hour during the day and on the weekends every hour. So does that mean that it's going to run more often than what we currently are getting?
Correct. So what's called headway, so how often it comes, is something that would be defined. But by nature, bus rapid transit is frequent and often. I don't know Pierce Transit's definitions, but for Metro Transit, as an example, theirs is typically every 12 to 15 minutes in order to be defined as a bus rapid transit.
Okay,
And
and
that's
that
the
is,
Sound Transit BRT on 405 is intended to be even more frequent than that. I think the shortest route is a 5-minute headway. So it not only saves a lot of time, but you don't have to wait very long. So it's hard to predict exactly what would follow on 167, but I think somewhere between those is certainly reasonable.
and so this is similar to what Metro has as the rapid ride. Is that correct?
It would be similar. It'd probably more
Okay.
close to Stride, what's going in right now on 405, since it's going to operate on a limited access facility with express toll lanes. It's going to increase the reliability of the trip, so you can go faster than hopefully the cars that are going on. A lot of like Pierce Transits that are coming online, as well as Metros, are on regular streets, and so they get caught up with some in those factors as well. So it will be a little bit more like the Stride.
Okay, great, thanks. And one last question, in reference to what was labeled as inline stations, does that mean light rail?
So for BRT, the inline stations are, if you literally think about a bus station in the median. So essentially where a lot of the time savings is coming for the bus transit system is by staying in the ETL, so they're moving faster, and rather than having to make all of the weaves to cross all the traffic to get off and exit to get to a bus station, they just jump right into an inline station. Most of those inline stations have ped ramps, so you can get on and off them at those locations. It just adds a lot of efficiency.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
So, so this is you're going to formalize a plan. So when this starts happening, who gets to pick the priorities on which items go forward and which ones don't?
So that's part of the next phase. So one of the things we were able to do in this plan is identify some near-term projects that could be easily and quickly delivered with less environmental clearance, kind of easier to shovel ready. Our next step is that implementation plan where we collaborate with our partners in order to start determining which project goes first. This is in many ways a similar process in that the data informs it, and our partners help us refine the order that they go in.
So are your partners the public works directors of each city along the way, or just the city administrators, or who are you considering your partners?
So this moves up into what Rob is handling with the what's called an interworking group, which is similar to what the technical advisory committee meeting is for 167 plan, and an executive advisory group, which is the policy group. The other kind of third wheel for this one is kind of the equity perspective. Those are our partners.
But is Sumner one of your partners in that?
Yes. And
Okay.
we'll have to defer to Rob. I think
No,
he
and
knows the
Sumner is invited to the EAG, the Executive Advisory Committee. So it's a very useful thing to attend if you have the time to be able to do it. We get very strong attendance, particularly from the stakeholders in the North End. We haven't had as much attendance from 167 stakeholders. We would love to see that. We're hoping that the amazing work that's happened on the master plan and a real vision of what can be will increase the involvement of that.
Yeah, it sounds like the interest would have peaked a little more now that you're actually talking about completing some of the things on 167. Now, the dotted line that goes from Puyallup to the port, is that something that's on the plan?
So that is actually the Gateways, State Route 167 completion. So that one is already funded. The section from I-5 to 509 is under construction. And the section from where I-5 to where 167 ends in Puyallup is in design.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that Sumner is coming to the party because it's not actually within our boundaries. I mean, it's something that's outside of us. So it really, really affects us. So I just wanted to make sure that, that our community thinks it's really important to be in on some of these, prioritizing which things go forward and which kind of get pushed to the background.
We absolutely agree.
And I'll double check to make sure Michael and others on your staff are invited to that interworking group, which is tomorrow.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Vitello.
So Sumner is, at the bottom of 167 right now, but is the state looking at south, like Ordine to Holly, Graham, Puyallup, are they looking at any better road system?
I can
in that
speak
area?
to a degree to this one. So one of the things that we, the 167 plan was tasked with was to coordinate with projects that are kind of on the cusp. So freeways like 405 and making sure we understood the impact there all the way down to 512. As part of that coordination, we coordinated with the Olympic region. They have 2 studies going on right now. One is the 512 study, where they're looking at operations on 512. And the other one is related to mobility and connectivity in South Pierce. We did coordination along the way to make sure they were aware of what we were working on and could incorporate into their process. And then where we were ahead of where they could, they informed our process, but we were the first to finish.
Okay, well, that's good to hear.
And I'm happy to share the leads on those if you would like them.
Okay.
Anybody else online have any input? All right. Nobody up here? We're done. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I will send that graphic tomorrow morning.
She'll be waiting. Thank you. Are you taking that highway home? Oh, okay. All right, our next item is downtown construction update, and we have Mr. Michael Kosa and Elisa Javier Ayala. How's that? I will never get it.
Jeff's getting that loaded up. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Once again, I'm Michael Kosa, the city engineer, and I'm joined by Elisa O'Haver Ayala, our associate city engineer, and also the project manager for the construction of the 2 major projects that are currently underway in downtown Sumner. So we're here to provide a construction update to talk through kind of actually, we're here about 3 months ago, 2-3 months ago, to talk through this kind of the upcoming work that was going to be happening as part of the Town Center Utility and WUNERF project. And now we are well underway and well in the thick of it. So wanted to come back and discuss that as well as upcoming work. So with that, see if it'll work for me.
State workers could do it.
I know. There we go. Thanks, Jeff. So yes, our Better Roads Ahead discussion. So we have the Town Center Utility and WUNERF project. We've been talking about roadway impacts from that project, and we kind of giving you an update really on where that project is at and what the time frame is as we move toward completion. as well, we'll talk about the Main and Wood project and that project getting underway and the upcoming impacts that we'll be seeing over the next few months there. And then how the timing of those projects and then the communication plan for how we communicate how those projects are going to overlap. So from here, just a reminder, these are the two bookend projects on Main Street, as we've been calling them. If you walk out to Main Street, Cherry and Kincaid, you'll see it's still, it's very much under construction right now, which is great. We'll have some photos later. But we'll take a look at that and see kind of where that's progressed to. But really it's to improve the Main Street area. So we've got the one end on the left of that TC Utility and Wooner project. And then on the other end, we have Main and Wood. And the work that we're doing there, both of them will be similar intersections, concrete intersections. They'll both be raised, really prioritizing pedestrians. So that's where we're at for the major work in 2023 in terms of kind of what you see on a daily basis. But with that, I'll hand it over to Elisa to talk about some of the project challenges that we've experienced and all fair the future.
So we talk a lot about the Wooners and what we see over at Heritage Park, and that's really the more visible side of the TCUW project. But really what started this whole project is, as we all know, is the utilities that we were trying to make improvements on underneath. So I just grabbed a couple pictures of prime examples of why we are doing what we are doing and what we are working on currently wrapping up. So this is one of the many water leaks we encountered along the way on our old water lines. This is replacing the sewer laterals on Cherry. Right before we actually started working over on Cherry, we had a sewer lateral break, which was timely. Rather have it happen before than after. So that prompted us to replace all the sewer laterals on Cherry before we put them under nice, pretty concrete. And then this is what actually I took this one this afternoon out at the intersection at Main with Cherry and Kincaid. Half of the intersection done. And it's really starting to look like our plan that we have here that we've been looking towards of our end goal of nice colored stamped concrete, curbless streets, and really pedestrian friendly. So this one is wrapping up, if you can believe it or not. And I'm not gonna, you're not gonna commit to any end date yet, but we are wrapping up. We are busy, have been very busy in the last month, and will continue to be very busy in the coming month, getting everything put back together. So
we have May on our calendar. We have June on our calendar. July is not really on the calendar yet. So I would say we're shooting to have a lot of work done in May and June, and hopefully a lot wrapped up by the end of June.
On that last picture of that crosswalk, is that a signal crosswalk or is that just a,
this one,
yeah, will they be cross?
there is no
Signals.
signals.
Okay.
So can't see at the top, this is phase one, which we are currently in up on Main Street and wrapping up this week. Next week, we switch to phase two. Which is
Elisa, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you go back to that last slide?
this one.
Yep, and just tell council what's happening Tuesday and Thursday, because I think that's important to understand
Yes.
the magnitude and
So-
the good things.
As part of wrapping up phase one, we have finished, as you saw in the photo, and if you walk out there, the concrete intersection at Main, Kincaid, and Cherry. What is happening tomorrow and Thursday and Friday is that we are grinding and overlaying a number of the streets that we have been working on. And so we are putting them back together, including a block of Main Street. So the block of Main Street between Kincaid and Alder will get grind and overlay with this project as well. So tomorrow morning, they will be grinding just the south lane. So it'll be in alignment with the concrete that we already did. And then when we come back, we'll do the other half in phase two. But tomorrow morning, they will be grinding that south lane, the eastbound lane, on Main Street, just between Kincaid and Alder. And then Thursday morning, they will be overlaying it. The rest of the streets that are in this first wave of grind and overlay is Alder from Park to Maple, as well as Academy from Ryan to Kincaid.
The advantage there, and this is kind of an extra benefit of this project, is we're gonna get a brand new street surface, basically from the railroad tracks to Alder Avenue,
On both sides.
on both sides when this is done, which means we're not gonna have to go touch this piece of roadway for quite some time.
Heaven.
Thanks for that reminder, Jason.
Yeah.
So phase 2, starting on Monday, we will flip the intersection at Main Street so that it is operating in an eastbound only configuration on Main Street. So that means no westbound movement on Main Street between Alder and Kincaid. They will be working on the north half of the intersection to complete that half of the intersection and the improvements there. There is a small amount of utility work there, and then they will start the concrete. We will continue to maintain pedestrian access at all times. And that one is expected to go significantly faster. It took them about, I think, 6 weeks to do the south side. It might take half the time to do the north. So on to Main and Wood, which started last Monday and will continue through spring of next year. So they are currently in phase 1, which is 6 weeks of night work. They're doing the utilities as well as curb and sidewalk. So that should finish up mid to late June, depending a lot on weather. But it's going very well so far. They're working at night, 7:30 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. That's Monday night through Friday morning. Outside of those times, the Main and Wood intersection and the roadways are open for traffic.
I think they're shutting the railroad down tomorrow too.
That's
That's in
complete.
the-
That is not us.
That is in the other projects category, but yes,
Yes.
so. a little
You know whose
aside.
fault it's gonna be.
Well,
We will likely get blamed for it, but it is not us. That is BNSF saying, we need to do emergency work on Main Street. And so Wednesday night, they are
Yeah.
closing.
Wednesday. Yeah.
What's that little road that goes, not the red, it looks like it goes through the high school kind of.
I think that's actually showing Heritage Bank's parking lot.
mhm.
Oh, that's what that
It
is. It's
really
just as
zoomed
far
in.
as, it's
We're-
just, okay, so it's not as far a distance as I think it is. Okay. It's their drive-through and the rest of their parking lot. All
Yep.
right, thank you.
You're welcome. So, phase 2, which will be essentially July, is a month of full closure at the Main and Wood intersection. And that's going to be when we are working on putting the intersection back together, pouring the nice stamped colored concrete, and finishing it all up. So that'll be a month of full closure. And then we move on to phase 3, where they are working, we reopen the intersection. We are essentially just working under small traffic control to do landscaping, site furnishings, bollards, striping, finishing it up. So by late July, the intersection is essentially done, except we still have our old signal because the new signal has a very long lead time. And so we cannot install that signal or poles until we get those, which will be in spring of 24. So when those poles come in, we will have, again, under just local traffic control, the intersection will be, they'll put up those poles, take down the existing signal, and then we will be done.
Hopefully shorter than spring 24,
We're
but I
hoping.
think we're planning for spring and hoping for sooner. They're on order. I think so the contract with the
April.
contractor, yeah.
April.
Our contractor they had to do some design work for them, so they started in January and April was when they were finalized. So we'll be moving forward from there.
Yeah. So I don't expect you to see all the details of this, but this is overall the detour plan for Main and Wood, which is essentially there's an outer detour that tries to direct the traffic away from Main and Wood and get it onto Valley. And then for those who do want to be on Main and Wood in downtown, and we encourage that because businesses are open, that we provide them a route to get to downtown. So this one is also very busy. What I'm trying to draw your attention to is when we have that month of full closure, we were able to provide temporary parking for Dairy Freeze and the bike shop, as well as Napa on Main Street and those areas circled in blue. So that was something that actually helped us lean, but not just us, but also the property owners in favor of this full closure option, is because we could provide that temporary parking. Whereas if we had to keep the intersection open and traffic going through there while we were doing work on the south leg, especially, their parking would have been severely impacted. So by doing this, it actually helps to maintain their access. So overall timeline of the projects on the top and on the left, you will see in yellow, that's TCUW finishing up. On the right and on the bottom in blue is Main and Wood, and green, where we are at today, is this overlap time when both projects are going at both bookends. So TCUW should be finishing up summer, and Main and Wood will finish up in the spring. Hopefully we beat both of those.
All right, so thank you very much, Elisa. It was a great project update. I wanted to talk a little bit more holistically about communications and also what's coming up next. So how are we communicating this to people? We've been communicating in a multitude of ways. The public's been communicating with us. We've had good interactions for the most part, and definitely working on providing as much information as we possibly can to people so they can manage during the construction of this. So weekly project webpage updates, and I'll get into that a little bit more, but if you're getting those, if you're going onto our website, you're seeing those pages updated weekly with new construction photos, new work activities. You can really keep a track and watch the whole thing kind of unfold from your computer. Better Roads Ahead page. Similarly, as you've seen that campaign, we've got posters, we've got handouts. Has the QR code. It will connect you to our webpage that shows you what's going on. We have meetings with area businesses that we've been doing. Well attended. We've run 2 business meetings. One I think was in March, and then one we just had in April. So really trying to keep connected with the area businesses, telling them what's coming, kind of a week or 2 of lead time of the next one we're planning on doing is it's going to be centered more around Main and Wood and the upcoming closures there once that project goes from night work to the full closure period. So we want to make sure we keep communicating during those major milestones so that people understand what's going to be happening and how long it's going to be happening and affecting their businesses. As Elisa said, we're open. We're all open for business, and we want to keep on encouraging folks to shop downtown, come downtown, enjoy the what you can in the downtown area, and very soon some really cool new streets. So Councilmember Patel.
Go ahead, Barbara.
So Rhubarb Days is the last part of June. Does the plan have that you'll have the street open, at least from Wood to the railroad tracks?
We have some really positive vibes going on toward Rhubarb Days, and while we aren't going to say for sure, we are targeting getting things wrapped up so that Rhubarb Days can be a really great event in and around the Wooner. So that's, I think, well, I'll say, leave it right now. You know, we can't control the weather. We can't control a lot of things. But the schedule we have does have us in a pretty good wrapped up point when we get to rhubarb days. So,
Okay, good.
yeah, we're excited about that. And we're hoping it can be kind of a bigger celebration because of that. So, yeah, area businesses, we talked about that. And then we continue to do updates in our other communication sources, which include our newsletter, our e-news, you know, social media, Twitter, open houses. Carmen is super helpful to us to be able to provide, you know, we have that information and she's really able to provide it to the community in a number of different sources. And then keep shopping efforts. We want to keep people knowing, like I said, Main Street is open. The businesses are all open. We have access, we have pedestrian access to all of our businesses. So nobody's access has been cut off. Sometimes it feels that way. Sometimes there's gravel in front of you instead of pavement, concrete sidewalk, but it's all a work in progress. And we're really trying to work to make sure that we do not have any major closures or anything like that for businesses.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you explain to me how you're gonna do that parking down there in front of the dairy freeze and stuff? Will people be able to walk through there? Will traffic still be able to drive through there?
See if I can go back to that picture real quick.
No, you went
So
too
you
fast.
went
Did it-
past the circles.
No.
Oh, you
I
know,
wanted to hear.
okay.
Are you talking during construction or post-construction? Like,
No, not post, during.
During
I just want to
construction,
know
That's why everybody.
if you have to, if you go in there and park, do you have to go back out the same way?
So on both sides, you can see there's little yellow arrows and it might be hard to see. On the intersection side, there is room for a turnaround essentially. That you can go in there. Ideally, you would come right back out, you know, at park and come back out, but should there be a need, there is room to turn around.
Okay, down at the end of what you have cordoned off will be a room to turn around and come back out again.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I like the body and the crosswalk.
Too far. Okay, so we were done with that one. So I just wanted to demonstrate one of our maps. I think you might have seen some of these maps before, but this is some of the maps that we are producing on a weekly basis to talk about where you can drive in downtown. This map used to be smaller. It's gotten bigger. And primarily because now it's encompassing Main and Wood, it encompasses more of the streets around there. And you can see, right, you know, this one, you can see a lot of the areas are all green around there, and the blue is denotating that it's closed 7:30 p.m. to 5:30 a.m. So we're really trying to work on using this as a communication tool. So it doesn't matter which project you're concerned about. We don't want to route people to a project page that says what streets are closed for that project. It's really the holistic view. Here we have a number of projects. Here's all of them, and here's where you can drive. So that we are continuing to update on a regular basis, weekly, and more often if things are changing more frequently. But we'll be updating it shortly when we have our phase 2 traffic switch out here at Main and Cherry and so. In addition to that, we also have a sidewalk access map that we've created. Wanted to try to convey to folks, hey, I need to walk somewhere. What's open, what's not, what sidewalks can I use? And so we're updating this just like we are updating the other map. But it really shows all the different places you can walk, and for the most part, most walking routes are open. Even the areas where you can see that we have some red area closed. There's still a very, very faint yellow line that goes around there that says open with construction. So we really want to keep as all of those walkways open as much as we possibly can. There was a period of time where we had to close part of Cherry Avenue due to some work that was happening underneath the sidewalk. But our priority is to try to maintain those pedestrian and non-motorized paths. Another way that we communicate, though, with the public. So that kind of gets us to wait, there's more. We have a few more projects in the wings. Most of them are not our direct responsibility, but there are more projects that are going to be affecting traffic and in the next, during the rest of the year. So the first one that we'll talk about is the City of Puyallup water main replacement. That's scheduled for mid to late summer start. They'll be doing work. This map is actually their alignment, and there's some significant work in and around the main and the Friar Main Traffic Avenue intersection. So that doesn't show it here, but they're going right through that intersection as well. So a lot of it's night work, some of it's day work where we could make it work, but we've been working closely with the City of Puyallup to make sure that we don't have we try to minimize the impacts as best able. But the intersection closure there is going to be really challenging. We've been working with them to try to talk about how challenging it will be, and they've had a number of traffic control plans that they've been reviewing. Also likely to be mostly night work. So
Will it stop there and go across the bridge, or will it go straight through?
it's going, I believe
Yeah.
it's going straight through, but it connects there too. So there's a lot of work going. It's going to be a very busy place for a period of time. The next project I wanted to talk about was the Sound Transit parking garage. We've all been talking about that. They're saying the second half of this year. That might mean August or September or October, but odds are at some point they'll be closing their garage and starting work on their site. So that will be a major impact. We think that we will be hopefully well out of their way by the time they come through. So I think the timing is going to work out just right. We have the bike lanes that we're adding on Academy. I know they're very excited to be able to have that as another non-motorized way of accessing the station during construction. So those will be completing with the utility and Wooner project. And then private development. We have the Red Apple site, as we all know. There's the replacement for the burned out building on Main Street. There's other private developments like the one next to the library that are in a planning and permitting stages. So there's a number of other private development projects. And even in addition to that, we have other road work going on just because we have pavement patching, which is just kind of regular pothole and kind of larger deteriorated pavement. That there's a pavement patching project that's going to be starting next week, the week of May 15th. There's quite a bit of work on wood on that project, but there's also work in other parts of the city. And then we also have coming up our chip sealing and crack sealing projects. They're a little bit further out, but they'll be happening this summer as well. So in addition to just, the bigger projects, we have regular work that we'll continue to do and continue to move forward on. It's a lot of work going on right now, and it makes for a very exciting
Wears me
department.
out.
Yeah, I'm tired. But
Have any other questions for? Go ahead, Barbara.
So this, I'm going to talk about the light at Traffic Avenue and Main Street. If there's a train coming through, like all 4 lanes will be stopped. Is there a way that, like the north and south could, move forward and not just sit there? Because we know that, you can't go east very easily because of the train tracks. So I'm just wondering who is the scheduler of traffic lights?
so the quick answer is the city is in control of those. The more complicated answer is we have those are designed signal phases that someone has designed and timed, and we've worked with the railroad for preemption during trains as trains go by. It doesn't mean that that's the end all. It does mean that if we want to make any changes, we will probably be talking with a consultant to do so. We have been talking a little bit about a couple of our signals and as part of the transportation plan update. Transportation plan is being updated with the comprehensive plan. And so that's something that we are looking at, especially like I've already talked about asking them to look at the old the cannery
Mhm.
signal.
Yeah.
And if there's ways to improve that, that's a very challenging signal situation for a
Right.
number of reasons. But we're asking them to take a look at that. We can have them look a little bit at traffic in Maine. Traffic in Maine is a very difficult intersection as well.
Yeah.
So, so yes, there are some possible solutions, but it is not a simple answer, unfortunately. But thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. Good job, you two, going through all the project review statuses. I'm just had a question, the month-long closure of the Wood and Main intersection for the month of July. You've talked a lot about the businesses and encouraging people to shop downtown, and the businesses are open. That's going to be probably, that in August will be the biggest business for the Dairy Freeze. I go there to get ice cream with my grandkids quite a lot, and it's always crowded. And I'm wondering, have they talked about requesting any special dispensation so it doesn't impact their business? That's question one. And question two, I noticed the detour routes go around the block to Sumner Avenue and this, I don't know the name of the street. Maybe it's, well, whatever. That's going to impact a lot of residents. And I'm wondering if I'm sure you have, but have you received any feedback from any of the residents in that area that will be impacted by an increase in traffic?
Click on that PowerPoint.
Here.
Or the one before, that one.
Oh, so, do you want, I can take it?
Go ahead.
Okay. Regarding the dairy freeze, and it is notable that we are in, a really peak time for them. I also have some hope that they're, people are not just driving by. People are going there as a destination for those nice summer evenings. And what's going to be interesting is it's going to be much quieter from a traffic perspective through that area. So part of us hopes that it turns into a really kind of lively area during that time period. I know maybe that's a little bit hopeful, but it also is them being kind of at the end of a cul-de-sac in a way, with plenty of parking. It could be I'm not sure how it's going to turn out.
I don't think he understands how you're blocking the street off to accommodate them.
Okay, go back to that.
I think directly, well, before we switch there, Mr. Stewart, we did spend considerable time talking to all these businesses
Yeah.
on whether to close it fully or to leave it open partially. And they were very much in favor of just close it, get it done.
Mhm.
And we also had some considerations too with timing with the school district, because, the last thing we want is this going into the next school year, which then really also affects bus transportation for the district.
Sure. No, it's a big can of worms. There's no real good solution to any of this, but this is the best solution. So I appreciate the efforts that you put into it. My heart goes out to those people that if this is going to impact their business at all, they could go out of business. I mean, the same guy who owns the bicycle shop that owns the Dairy Freeze. And I just hope that there's some way that the city can support their need to meet their customers' requirements.
We definitely did. As you said, we really targeted the best ways that we could to shorten the schedule. Working with the contractor, they had 100 working days to complete the project. where there was potential that they had to maintain access through the intersection on Wood Avenue. And with working with them, we went from a 100-day potential closure to a 40-day night work and a 20-day closure.
Hmm.
And to
Oh,
be
that's good.
perfectly honest, it is almost, in order to pour the concrete that's designed for that intersection, 20 days is about as short as you can get.
Sure.
Concretes usually takes about 7 days to cure before you can get vehicles on it. And with the amount of concrete, it's kind of like how you paint, right? You gotta paint, you can't paint yourself into the middle of the intersection. So they can't pour the concrete into the middle of the intersection. They gotta let it cure up a little bit as they go. There's a few different pours with the different colors of concrete. So it's about as efficient as a contractor can be. And they've been very respectful and helpful as we work through with them through this project. It's beginning phases. So we're doing, I think we're in the best situation we can be in. It's always going to be challenging to redo an intersection, and one that doesn't have a lot of detour options that are great. So
Yeah, I don't mean to imply that you're not doing a good job. I think you're doing a fantastic job with this. This is quite the project. I'm just concerned about the neighbors and the impact of the small businesses, and it looks like you're addressing it. So thank you so much.
Anybody else? No? Not it?
That's it for presentation.
All right.
thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. We'll move on to city administrator report.
I have nothing tonight, Mayor.
And we have nothing there. Any council meeting agenda? Anybody have any issues with council meetings? None there. Any committee issues? No committee issues either. You, no? We have no executive session. So I will adjourn this meeting at 7:17.